Kurt, so for this episode for PBT Extra, we just have to go right in. Let's just go straight to the history-making moment in Madison Square Garden, no less. Steph Curry hits his 2,974th three to become the all-time leader in the NBA. What was your reaction to that historic moment in the Garden?
It felt like a coronation, didn't it? Like we've known for how many years have you and I and everybody who follows basketball said, yeah, Steph Curry's the best shooter ever, right? Like there's not some great like surprise here. We knew this was coming. The question was like the record books have just kind of caught up with what we already knew, which is that he's the greatest shooter ever. I thought, that it sort of felt like that moment. And I'm glad it kind of happened at MSG, not just to rub the salt in the wounds of the Knicks fans who weren't able to draft him back in 2009, but also just like, nothing against Indiana, but that's a big stage, and you wanted this to either happen at home for him or on a big stage. I was excited. When you were watching the game, what did you think?
The awards music came on the broadcast. I mean, it was like a media timeout or something. Everything stopped. There was a standing ovation. He was able to spend time with Coach Steve Kerr, who was a great shooter himself, right? Yeah. Give him the record-breaking ball. He gave that ball to his dad on the court, had a moment with Ray Allen, who was there. Reggie Miller was on the call, and at the end of the game, Steph Curry got the jersey that says Curry 2009-74, right, on the back there. He was given that jersey by Ray and Reggie, and he said, "Look, these guys are icons. I grew up watching them." Ray, when he passed Reggie's record, that was a big moment for me. I remember watching that. So it's like the whole thing just came. It was beautifully done, and I thought it was very important. Kurt, because in basketball, it's one of the games in my mind that really prioritize history. Like you always see the legends getting props at all the NBA All-Star games. Mr. Bill Russell is not Bill Russell, it's Mr. Russell. Yeah. That's just part of the game. That's just part of basketball. So having Steph Curry share that moment with two guys who know what it's like and who just willingly passed that throne and celebrated that instead of trying to make it about themselves. I thought that was really special.
And the respect was there, which, not always in sports do you see guys kind of happy to see their marks go down, right? Like, but in this case, they're like, you know what? We respect how Steph Curry got here. I think they respect his work ethic. He's got a lot in common with Ray Allen. I remember after his first title, I had gone to a sponsored event for a sponsor of his with a chance to talk to Steph Curry one-on-one, and it was a golf-related event. And if you talk to him about golf or basketball, like he loves the process. He loves, and Ray Allen was very much, Ray Allen's almost OCD about stuff. Curry was very much that way. Yes, obviously natural skill. Obviously kind of grew up in a family with, dad was an amazing shooter, right? Like, but Curry puts in the hours. He loves the process. He loves working on that, little hop to the right, jump three that he's got. You know how many of those he's taken in a gym to get ready for those moments? The pull-up threes, like he loves that process. He loves to go through that kind of work, and you don't get to be where he is without that kind of love of process. I think it's why golf works for him too, right? Like it's the same mental concept, isn't it? Like you've got to hit thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of balls to get your short game, right? Like to get your 9-iron where you want it, let alone.
And it can still be elusive.
Exactly. I think shooting can be the same way. So I think he enjoys that process.
Yeah, Reggie Miller, and before the game, Reggie and Ray were talking about that and said, look, I like talking to guys like Ray and Steph because they know what it feels like to get to the gym early, with the keys when it's still dark outside and it's just you in the gym. You're sweeping the floor beforehand to get 1,000 or 2,000 shots, a day. And it's not like 1,000 shots, it's 1,000 makes. That's what they mean by that. Yeah. And that kind of dedication to the craft is admirable. Maybe for 1 year, maybe for 2 years, for 10 years, for 20 years. When you think about that kind of dedication without the results that you're talking about. Remember, there was a time when no one knew who Steph Curry was at Davidson, right? And that's what's so crazy. And I love what he said in his comments post game. He said, "I've had crazy faith, my whole life." And that's what shooters have to have is, you have to believe you're the best shooter ever in order to become the best shooter ever. It's just it's one of the coolest things, and I'm just thrilled for him and his family. I'm happy that he actually got to share that moment with his mom and dad as well in the Garden.
Absolutely. It's been amazing. And remember the other part of his career, those first couple of years when he was having real ankle issues, there were legitimate questions about, I mean, he had to rework his shot and how he had to rework how he lands on his jumper. Like there was a lot of work that went into just rehabbing that. And he got that first contract, his first extension of his rookie contract wasn't for near the max. It was a big contract. And we wrote at the time, like, it's a bit of a gamble. It's either going to be the best contract in history because he's going to live up to his potential, or you're going to regret it because he never got healthy. And fortunately for all of us, he's orthotics, reworking how he lands, the work he's put in physically to be right has got him here too.
Yeah, fortunately for all, that's a true statement. When you think about transcendental stars of the game of basketball, Steph Curry has to be on a short list of players, who captured the imagination of an entire generation. That's a very short list, Kurt. I mean, when you think about players who have changed the game, that's a little bit of a longer list. But players who have captured the imagination of everyone, that's a whole different level. And what's very interesting too, and we could spend time on this if you find it interesting, is how Ray Allen was saying that shooting is very subjective. And going into this record, it was like this 3-day buildup. And like you said, we knew that Steph Curry's, one of the greatest, if not the greatest shooter to ever play basketball. But hearing shooters talk about shooting, it's different. They're like, okay, well, who's the best shooter on a one dribble pull up? Who's the best open, shooter in open space? Who's the best shooter, trying to get a shot off, creating their own shot? Like there are so many different elements of shooting that make it a science, and it's more of an art than a science. And I thought that comment by Reggie Miller was really, really interesting, especially when you're talking about who's the greatest shooter in the record books, versus who's the greatest shooter to ever live. It's a little more complicated.
It is. I think what makes Curry special is that he can shoot off the bounce, that he can shoot off the catch. Like most guys are better at one than the other, and he's really, really good at both. I mean, would you put him in the GOAT conversation? I mean, that's one of the things that's come up, and it's an interesting conversation. Would you have him in there?
No. But I think that I think the greatest of all time conversation is like that. That's, to me, that is a different conversation. We're talking about the greatest shooter of all time. I think right now, let's just focus on the amazing award and achievement. And, he has a resume that is truly like, it's incredible. But I think when we talk about the GOAT leap, let's wait until everything's said and done. I don't like how we talk about greatest of all time when people are still playing.
Yeah. I think there's something to that. And
not fair.
Where he ranks now and where he ranks when he's done playing. And maybe he ends up, we'll see where he ends up. Maybe he ends up on that second tier and he's only as good as Bird and Shaq and whatever else you're going to put on that. Like, to me, like, he is in the pantheons of conversation, however this lands, and he's earned that spot.
I mean, he's one of the 75 greatest basketball players to ever play the game, and he's in his early 30s. So that's kind of what I mean is when you look at where Steph started versus where he is now and where he could be, like who knows what could happen, right? But so it's very exciting. It's very exciting. And I can't wait to see him continue to add on to that number. I mean, what an incredible number, 2,974, Kurt. Wow.